In the city of Orange, nestled in northern Orange County, California, a 36-year-old woman named Maribel Ramos was preparing for a chapter she had spent her entire life earning. She had a graduation ceremony weeks away. A new relationship that felt right. A speaking invitation at a conference in Chicago. And a future she could finally see clearly. But sometime between a quiet Thursday evening and the following morning, Maribel vanished from her apartment on the 1800 block of East Rose Street. Her car sat untouched outside. Her dog waited alone inside. And the life she had fought so hard to build came to a silent, devastating stop. Maribel had always been the kind of person who carried weight without complaint. From a young age, she was ambitious, studious, and deeply compassionate. While her mother worked 2 jobs to keep the family going, Maribel stepped into a maternal role for her siblings. She looked after them, guided them, and created stability that most children her age never had to think about. Her sister Lucy described her as someone who gave endlessly to the people around her. And the people around her always felt it. Her dream since childhood was to work in law enforcement. After finishing school, she took a job as a security guard, building experience while keeping her eyes on a bigger goal. In August 2001, she made the decision to enlist in the United States Army, hoping it would open doors that civilian life could not. That decision carried a cost no one could have predicted. Within weeks of her enlistment, the attacks of September 11th changed everything. Maribel was deployed overseas to Iraq and completed 2 full military tours, rising to the rank of sergeant before receiving an honorable discharge in 2008. She came home carrying both pride and invisible scars. Never one to slow down, Maribel enrolled at California State University, Fullerton, to study criminal justice. She moved into an apartment with her mother, building a small, steady life around education and ambition. After her mother passed away in 2009, that apartment became a quieter place. Maribel put out an ad on Craigslist looking for a roommate, someone to split the rent and share the space. She received several responses, but one stood out. Kwang Chol Joy, who went by KC or Casey, was 54 years old and looking for a fresh start. He had recently lost both of his parents and was dealing with a difficult family situation involving his sister. His application was polite and straightforward. He described himself as a Korean, single, professional male looking for a small apartment or a private room with kitchen use. He had a small Yorkie, was a social drinker, a non-smoker, and liked to keep things clean. He seemed easygoing. And for a while, that is exactly what he was. The arrangement worked. Maribel and Casey walked their dogs together, went out dancing, and visited karaoke nights. He even started tutoring her niece Giselle in mathematics. Casey paid for an Alaskan cruise for them both. To Maribel, he was a friend. He told people he saw her like a sister. But underneath that friendship, something else had been growing the entire time. In the summer of 2012, Casey called Lucy and made a confession. He told her he was in love with Maribel. He wanted to marry her. He wanted children with her. Lucy immediately warned her sister. Maribel, trying to be kind, told Casey directly that romance was not going to happen between them. At first, he seemed to accept it. But that acceptance was a mask. Casey bought a new wardrobe. He got a tattoo. He reportedly spent around $12,000 on cosmetic surgery to make himself look younger. Every action was aimed at winning her over. And every action was ignored. Maribel did not return his feelings, and the more she made that clear, the more tightly he clung to her world. He had no other friends. He followed her everywhere and attached himself to her social circle. His entire life orbited around one person who had already said no. By the spring of 2013, the situation had deteriorated. Casey lost his job and began falling behind on rent. Maribel, who was busy preparing for graduation and had recently started seeing a man named Paul Lopez, was losing patience. She had been telling Casey to move out for weeks. He kept stalling. He wanted 2 more weeks. She wanted him gone the next day. Think about that for a moment. Imagine living with someone who has made their obsession with you known, who refuses to leave despite being told to, and whose behavior is becoming harder to predict. Most people would feel trapped. Maribel did. On April 21, 2013, less than 2 weeks before she disappeared, Maribel called 911. She was crying. She told the dispatcher that the call was being recorded and she wanted it on the record. She said she was afraid of her roommate. She described a confrontation that had left her scared for her life. She told the dispatcher that she had lied to Casey, telling him she had a gun in the apartment when she did not. She said the reason she lied was because he sounded like he would hurt her. She admitted she kept a machete near her bed. She said she was calling so that if something happened, there would be a record that she had acted in self-defense. The fear in her voice was clear, unmistakable. She also revealed the reason Casey was supposed to be leaving. He had developed romantic feelings for her. She did not share those feelings. And that rejection was making him dangerous. She said the words plainly. "If he comes to my door, I swear I will kill him. I am scared of him." That call should have changed everything. Sometimes the clearest warnings are the ones that arrive too early to be understood. On Thursday, May 2, 2013, Maribel and Casey had another argument about the rent. Paul Lopez was on the phone with Maribel during part of it. She had put him on speakerphone. Paul could hear Casey in the background as Maribel told him firmly that his time was up, that he had to be out the next day. Paul offered to come over. Maribel told him no. She said she could handle it, and she was going to bed. The apartment complex had security cameras, but most of them did not directly face her unit. One camera, however, captured Maribel that evening. At around 8:30 p.m., she walked to the manager's office to drop off her rent check in the deposit box. She was wearing pajama bottoms and a vest top. She walked back toward her apartment. That footage is the last confirmed image of Maribel Ramos alive. The next morning, Casey contacted Lucy asking if she had heard from Maribel. He said her car was still parked outside and she had not come home. He said he was worried. Then he called the police to file a missing persons report. What made this unusual was the timing. A neighbor later noted that Casey had mentioned wanting to file a report as early as 10:30 a.m. that day. It had only been a few hours since anyone expected her to be somewhere. Most people wait. Casey did not. When Lucy and her cousin arrived at the apartment, everything was locked. There was no answer. They could hear the dog inside. Lucy felt a wave of panic. She called the police again. When officers arrived and forced their way in, there were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no smashed locks. But Lucy walked into Maribel's bedroom and noticed two things. The bed was unmade. And a pillowcase was missing. Maribel never left her bed unmade. She was meticulous. She had strict routines. Officers recognized the significance immediately and contacted the homicide unit. Casey returned home from what he said was a drive. But he had not been driving. He had been sitting in his car in the parking area, watching the scene unfold. He told officers the last time he spoke to Maribel was the night before. He said he left the apartment, came back at 9, and she was not there. He assumed someone had picked her up. Her purse, keys, phone, and cards were all gone. There was no activity on any of them. Her phone was off. Paul Lopez was located and interviewed. His alibi was airtight. He had been working from 4 in the afternoon until midnight on the day Maribel disappeared, confirmed by a tracker in his work truck. He cooperated fully and was ruled out. But before he left, he said something important. He told them about Casey. About the arguments. About the tension. About the fact that Maribel had been trying to get him out and he would not go. The neighbor who had seen Casey that morning added another detail. He had noticed deep scratches on both of Casey's arms. Casey told him he had fallen into some bushes while walking his dog. Later, in an interview, Casey changed the story. He said the scratches came from trying to untangle a fishing line that had wrapped around a duck at the park. The scratches were deep, straight, and uniform. Neither story fit what they looked like. A cadaver dog was brought in. It reacted to the trunk of Casey's car. Inside the apartment, a pajama shirt was found stuffed away. It matched the bottoms Maribel had been wearing in the security footage. There was a small amount of her blood on the sleeve. No other DNA was found on it. As the search for Maribel continued, Casey spoke to the media at every opportunity. He said she was his best friend. His only friend. His only family. He described volunteering for DNA testing and consenting to searches without a warrant. He presented himself as cooperative, open, devastated. But on the internet, people noticed something else. On Yelp, where friends and family had been posting about Maribel's disappearance, Casey joined the conversation. He repeatedly referred to her in the past tense. People warned him to be more careful with his words. Whether it was a language issue or something deeper, the damage was done. Without his laptop, which had been taken as part of the investigation, Casey began visiting the local library to use the public computers. This became the turning point. Detectives arranged for him to use a specific terminal, one they could monitor in real time. They watched his screen remotely. At first, his activity seemed normal. Social media. Emails. A job application. He visited Maribel's Facebook page multiple times and checked on search routes being planned by her family and friends. Then something changed. He typed a search into the browser. How long does it take a human body to decay? He then opened a map application. He looked at a canyon area where Maribel's family planned to do an awareness walk. But instead of looking at the walking route, he panned the map to a much more remote, rural area. He zoomed into one specific spot off the side of a road. Not a trailhead. Not a landmark. A place that no casual hiker would ever go. He froze on this spot for several minutes, zooming in and out, over and over. Before Casey even left the library, detectives were already driving to that location. On May 17, 2013, in a shallow grave in a remote area of Majeska Canyon, they found Maribel's badly decomposed body. She had been covered in rocks. Her tattoo, a star on her left shoulder, confirmed her identity. The heat and the passage of time made determining a cause of death impossible. Casey was brought back in for questioning. He did not yet know that the body had been found. He was relaxed and talkative when he sat down. The moment detectives applied even the slightest pressure, he stood up and walked out of the room. He walked directly into handcuffs. When he was booked, they found Maribel's military identification tags on his person. What kind of person carries the ID tags of someone they claim to have never harmed? What kind of grief looks like that? Casey was charged with murder. His defense argued that Maribel had died inside the apartment, but not by his hand. They suggested she may have had a medical condition. They suggested she may have taken her own life. They pointed to her PTSD, her military service, and what they called a party lifestyle. They said the cause of death was unknown and that without it, a murder conviction was impossible. The only thing Casey was guilty of, they claimed, was improperly disposing of her body. The prosecution painted a different picture. A man whose entire world had collapsed. No job. No friends. No apartment lined up. And now the woman he was obsessed with wanted him gone. She had humiliated him. She had rejected him. She had called the police on him. And on the last night of her life, she told him to leave by tomorrow. The argument Casey describes as a drunken outburst was, in reality, the moment he lost the only thing he had left. There was no DNA linking him directly to the act. There was no confirmed cause of death. But there was the 911 call where Maribel said she feared for her life. There was the cadaver dog hitting on his car. There was the pajama shirt with her blood. There were the scratches that changed stories. There was a man sitting in a parked car watching police enter the apartment instead of helping search for the person he called his best friend. And there was a library computer that recorded him searching for body decay and zooming into the exact coordinates of a shallow grave. One piece of evidence alone might snap like a single pencil. But held together, a bundle of pencils becomes unbreakable. That is the nature of a strong circumstantial case. Every piece supports the next until the whole picture is impossible to dismiss. Casey Joy was found guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. From jail, he wrote dozens of letters to the judge protesting his innocence. He gave interviews. He claimed the library computer search was fabricated. He said he was set up. He announced plans to write a book titled Suspect, Guilty Until Proven Innocent. His request for a new trial was denied. He became eligible for parole in the spring of 2022. That was denied. It was denied again in 2023. He will not appear before the parole board until 2026. Maribel Ramos was a woman who served her country in war zones, who earned her education while working and grieving, who dreamed of a career helping other veterans. She survived combat in Iraq. She survived loss. She survived years of sacrifice and discipline that most people never face. And in the end, in the place where she should have been safest, she was taken by someone she had let into her life out of kindness. Her niece Giselle accepted her degree on her behalf at the graduation ceremony Maribel never got to attend. She walked across the stage carrying a photograph of her aunt so that she could be there too. Giselle said she lost a big sister, a best friend, another mother figure. She wanted everyone to know what a beautiful soul Maribel was. Some people believe Casey Joy deserves another look at the evidence. Some believe the conviction was right. But the question that stays, the one that is harder to answer, is simpler than guilt or innocence. How many people in your life right now are telling you something important, and you are not quite hearing it yet?